The fluorescent lights in the oncology ward buzzed like angry wasps, casting that sickly yellow glow that made everyone look half gone already. Mom lay there, tubes snaking from her arms, and my wife Beth stood beside the bed checking her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. "Jimmy, we really need to leave soon," Beth whispered, not looking up from her screen. "My flight to Vegas is at 6, and you know how crazy airport security gets on Fridays." I stared at her. Actually stared. Mom had been in the hospital for 3 days. The doctors were talking about managing expectations, and Beth was worried about missing her girls' weekend in Sin City. "Maybe you could reschedule," I said, keeping my voice level. "Just this once." Beth finally looked up, and her expression was pure annoyance. "Jimmy, I've been planning this trip for months. The hotel reservations, the show tickets, everything. Besides, there's nothing I can do here that the nurses can't do better." That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not snapped, that's too dramatic. More like a circuit breaker flipping, cutting power to whatever part of me had been making excuses for her behavior. "You're right," I said. "You should definitely go." Beth smiled, relieved. "Thank you for understanding. I knew you'd be reasonable about this." Reasonable, right. I'm James Parrish, Jimmy to everyone who matters, and at 39 I co-own Parrish Electrical with my brother John. We're not rich, but we're solid. Good reputation, steady contracts, the kind of business that keeps the lights on in a town that's seen better decades. I've got calloused hands and a sharp mind that most people underestimate, which has always worked in my favor. Beth, my wife of 16 years, used to appreciate that about me. Used to appreciate a lot of things that apparently don't matter anymore. She kissed my forehead like I was one of our daughters. "I'll call you from Vegas, okay? Give your mom my love." After she left, trailing expensive perfume and the click of designer heels, I sat with Mom for another hour. She was sleeping, but her breathing was steady, and that was something. The nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, brought me coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. "Your wife seems nice," Patricia said, making conversation. "She has her moments," I replied. What I didn't say was that those moments were getting fewer and farther between. I drove home to our Colonial in Maple Heights, the kind of neighborhood where people still waved to each other and complained about property taxes. Beth had left her suitcase by the front door, along with a note reminding me to water her orchids and pick up her dry cleaning. The house felt different with her gone. Quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like the quiet before a storm. I was grabbing a beer from the fridge when I noticed Beth's iPad on the kitchen counter. She must have forgotten it in her rush to catch the flight. The screen was still on, showing her messages. And I wasn't snooping, not at first. But when you see your brother's name at the top of your wife's message thread, curiosity becomes something harder to ignore. The first message made my stomach drop. The second one made me sit down hard in one of our kitchen chairs. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Jimmy's at the hospital again, so we have the house to ourselves. Wear that thing I bought you." John's response. "Already in the car. This sneaking around is getting old, Beth. When are you going to tell him?" "Soon, after Vegas. I need time to figure out the best way to handle everything. He's going to be devastated." I scrolled up, my hands surprisingly steady. 3 months of messages. 3 months of my wife and my brother planning their future while discussing me like I was an obstacle to be managed. The really twisted part? They were using our family business to coordinate their meetings. John would text about checking the electrical at the Henderson job site, and Beth would respond that she'd swing by to drop off lunch. I'd actually thanked her once for being so supportive of the business. My phone buzzed. Text from Beth. "Landed safely. Having drinks with the girls. Love you." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I checked our credit card statements online. The Henderson Motel, charged to our joint account 6 times in the past month. The same motel where John had been staying while his house was being renovated. Renovations that, as it turned out, existed only in the elaborate fiction my wife and brother had constructed. I finished my beer and opened another one. Then I did what any reasonable person would do. I called the credit card company and reported all of Beth's cards stolen. Then I called the bank and moved half our savings into an account with only my name on it. Then I changed all the passwords on our streaming services, our home security system, and our Wi-Fi. By the time I was done, it was past midnight, and I felt more clear-headed than I had in months. Beth wanted to handle things after Vegas? Perfect. I'd give her something to handle. My phone rang at 2 in the morning. Beth's number. Jimmy! Her voice was shrill, panicked. Something's wrong with my credit cards. They're all declined, and the hotel is threatening to kick us out. That's terrible, I said, making my voice concerned. Have you tried calling the bank? Of course I tried calling the bank. They said the cards were reported stolen. Jimmy, you have to fix this right now. I'll call them first thing Monday morning, I said. But you know how these things go on weekends. Probably just a computer glitch. Monday? Jimmy, I'm stranded in Vegas. I need money now. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're resourceful. Give my regards to the girls. I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby. Beth came home Sunday night in an Uber that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. I was in the garage, organizing my tools, when I heard the front door slam. Jimmy! Her voice echoed through the house. We need to talk, now. I took my time walking inside. Beth stood in the living room, still in her Vegas outfit, but the glamour had worn off. Her hair was flat, her makeup smudged, and she looked like she'd been crying. How could you do that to me? She demanded. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I had to borrow money from strangers to get home. Do I have any idea how humiliating it is? I repeated. That's an interesting choice of words. Something in my tone made her pause. What's that supposed to mean? I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up her iPad. You forgot this when you left. Very careless. The color drained from her face. Jimmy, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've gotten very good at explaining things. Like explaining to John how I'm going to be devastated when you finally tell me about your affair. Beth's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. 3 months of messages, Beth. 3 months of you and my brother planning your little future while using our business and our marriage as cover. She tried a different approach, stepping closer with tears in her eyes. Jimmy, please. I never meant for it to happen. It just did. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this? I laughed, and it didn't sound like a pleasant sound. Beth, you were planning to leave me. The only thing you regret is getting caught. That's not true. Then call John, right now. Tell him it's over. Beth's silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to pack a bag and stay somewhere else while we figure this out. I've already talked to a lawyer. You talked to a lawyer? Beth's voice went up an octave. Jimmy, you're overreacting. We just need to sit down and discuss this like adults. Like adults? You mean like adult enough to have an affair with my brother while I was taking care of my sick mother? That hit home. Beth flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm not leaving my house, she said, trying to sound firm. Half of everything here is mine. You're right, half is yours. But the security system is mine. And as of an hour ago, you're not in the system anymore. I walked to the front door and held it open. Your choice. Walk out now, or I call the police and report a trespasser. You wouldn't dare. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Maple Heights Police Department. Yes, I'd like to report. Stop. Beth grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. This isn't over, Jimmy. You can't just throw away 16 years of marriage. I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. After she left, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my favorite chair. The house felt different again. Still quiet, but this time it was the good kind of quiet. My phone started buzzing with texts. First from Beth, then from John, then from Beth's sister, then from my sister Connie. Word was spreading fast. Connie's message was the only one I answered. Is it true about Beth and John? I typed back. True as gravity. She called immediately. Jimmy, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Nobody did. They were very careful. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. Jimmy, be careful. Don't do anything you'll regret. Connie, I spent 16 years being careful, being reasonable, being the good guy. Look where it got me. Monday morning, I went to the office early. Parish Electrical operates out of a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. John's truck was already in the parking lot, which surprised me. He usually rolled in around 9 with a gas station coffee and complaints about traffic. I found him in the break room, pacing like a caged animal. Jimmy, we need to talk. I figured we might. John was built like a linebacker, all shoulders and attitude. 3 years older than me, and he'd never let me forget it. Growing up, he was the athlete while I was the bookworm. He got the girls while I got the grades. But when Dad passed and left us the business, John needed my brain to keep the lights on. Look, what happened with Beth? What happened with Beth, I interrupted, is that my wife and my brother decided to stab me in the back. What part of that needs clarification? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, John? Were you planning to send me a memo? He ran his hands through his hair. Beth was going to tell you. We were going to do it right. Right? There's a right way to destroy someone's family? Jimmy, you and Beth, you guys have been having problems for years. Don't pretend this marriage was perfect. That stopped me cold. So this is my fault? I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying maybe it's nobody's fault. Sometimes things just happen. Things just happen, I repeated. John, you've been screwing my wife for 3 months. That didn't just happen. That was a choice. A lot of choices. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry it went down like this. You're sorry it went down like this. Not sorry you did it. Sorry you got caught. John's face flushed red. You know what, Jimmy? Maybe Beth was right. Maybe you are impossible to talk to. Beth said I was impossible to talk to. She said a lot of things. About how you never listen. How you always have to be right. How you make her feel like she's not good enough. I stared at my brother, this man I'd worked beside for 15 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. Get out, I said quietly. Jimmy, get out of my office. Get out of my business. Get out of my life. You can't kick me out of the business. I own half. Check the paperwork, John. Dad left you 40%. I own 51. Majority rules. John's face went white. You can't do this. Watch me. After he left, I called our office manager, Mary, and our bookkeeper, Joanne. Both had been with us since the beginning, and both had always been more loyal to me than to John. Ladies, we need to have a conversation about the future of Parish Electrical. By lunch, word had spread through our entire network of contractors, suppliers, and clients. John Parrish was no longer associated with the company. Any business with him was unauthorized and void. My phone rang constantly. Some people were shocked. Others said they'd seen it coming. A few admitted they'd never trusted John anyway. But the call that mattered came at 3 o'clock. Mr. Parrish, this is Principal Martinez from Oakwood High. We need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident involving your daughter. 15-year-old Bree sat in the principal's office looking defiant and embarrassed at the same time. Her younger sister, 13-year-old Becca, sat beside her with tears streaming down her face. Principal Martinez, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, gestured to the chair across from her desk. Mr. Parrish, thank you for coming. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Bree posted a video on social media this morning about your family situation. It's gotten quite a bit of attention. My stomach sank. What kind of video? Bree finally looked at me, her jaw set stubbornly. I told people the truth about what you did to Mom. What I did to Mom? You threw her out. You canceled her credit cards and humiliated her in front of all her friends. Principal Martinez cleared her throat. The video has been shared extensively among our students and their parents. Some of the language is concerning. She turned her laptop toward me. The video was clearly shot in Beth's sister's living room. Bree sat on a couch, looking directly into the camera, with the kind of righteous anger only teenagers can muster. My dad is a complete psycho, she said. He kicked my mom out of the house for no reason and left her stranded in Vegas. She had to borrow money from strangers just to get home. He's controlling and abusive, and I can't believe I have to live with him. The video had 847 shares and 312 comments. I scrolled through a few of them. Most were supportive of Bree, calling me everything from toxic to dangerous. Several people I recognized from the neighborhood had commented, expressing concern for my daughter's safety. Bree, I said carefully, did Mom tell you why I asked her to leave? She said you guys had a fight and you overreacted. That's all she told you? That's all that matters. Becca spoke up for the first time. Daddy, is it true? Are you and Mommy getting divorced? I looked at my younger daughter, so much smaller and more fragile than her sister, and felt something crack inside my chest. These girls were caught in the middle of a war they didn't understand, being used as weapons by people who should have protected them. Becca, your mom and I are having some problems, but that doesn't change how much I love you and your sister. Then why won't you let Mommy come home? Bree demanded. Because sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people. And when that happens, there are consequences. What choice? What are you talking about? I looked at Principal Martinez, who was clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was taking. This is a family matter, I said. We'll discuss it at home. But Bree wasn't finished. Everyone thinks you're crazy now. Mom's friends are saying you had a breakdown. Mrs. Ellis said you always seemed unstable, Mrs. Ellis. Margot Ellis, Beth's best friend and a lawyer at one of the big firms downtown. I'd always found her a little too interested in our personal business, but Beth insisted she was just being supportive. What exactly did Mrs. Ellis say? She said you've always been jealous of Mom's success, that you couldn't handle her having her own life and friends. I drove the girls home in silence. Bree sat in the back seat, texting furiously, probably updating her social media followers on the latest developments. Becca stared out the window, lost in thought. At home, I made them grilled cheese sandwiches and tried to figure out how to explain their mother's betrayal without destroying their relationship with her forever. It was an impossible balance. Girls, I need you to understand something. Your mother and I are having problems, but it's not because I'm jealous or controlling. Then what? Bree challenged. Your mother has been seeing someone else, someone we both know very well. Becca gasped. Like dating someone else? Yes. Who? Bree demanded. I hesitated. Once I said it, there would be no taking it back. Uncle John. The silence that followed was deafening. Becca started crying again. Bree just stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's impossible, Bree said finally. Uncle John would never do that, and Mom would never cheat on you. I have proof. What kind of proof? I showed them the messages on Beth's iPad, watched their faces as they read through months of planning and deception, watched their worldview crumble in real time. I don't understand, Becca whispered. Why would they do this? I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people make choices that don't make sense to anyone else. Bea was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up at me with something that might have been respect. Are you going to take down my video? That's up to you. But you might want to consider whether you want to be part of their lie or part of the truth. She deleted the video that night, but the damage was done. Half the town thought I was an abusive husband, and the other half was starting to whisper about Beth and John. I decided it was time to pick a side. Tuesday morning, I drove to the Henderson Motel. The desk clerk, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20, looked nervous when I showed him my business card. I'm doing some electrical work for one of your regular customers, I said. John Parrish? He's been staying here while his house gets renovated? Oh yeah, Mr. Parrish. Nice guy. He's in room 12 most afternoons. Most afternoons? Yeah, him and his lady friend. They usually come in around 2, leave around 5. Very quiet, very polite. I slipped him a 20. What kind of car does the lady drive? Silver BMW. Real nice ride. Beth's car. I sat in my truck in the motel parking lot for an hour, thinking. I could confront them? I could hire a private investigator? I could file for divorce and let the lawyers sort it out? Or I could do something that would make sure everyone in town knew exactly who they were dealing with. I chose option 4. That afternoon, I drove to Beth's office. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized firm that handled accounts for local businesses. Not exactly high-powered, but she liked to act like she was closing million-dollar deals. I walked into the reception area, carrying a large flower arrangement, and asked for Beth Parrish. Oh, how lovely, the receptionist said. She's in a meeting, but I can take those for her. Actually, I need to deliver them personally. It's for a very special occasion. The receptionist called Beth's extension. Beth, your husband is here with flowers. Should I send him back? I could hear Beth's voice through the phone, sharp with panic. My husband, are you sure? He's standing right here with a beautiful arrangement. A long pause. Send him back. Beth's office was small but tidy, with motivational posters and photos of our family covering the walls. She stood behind her desk like it was a shield, her face pale. Jimmy, what are you doing here? I brought you flowers. I set the arrangement on her desk. Congratulations. Congratulations for what? For your new relationship. I thought your coworkers should know how happy you are. Beth's eyes widened as she read the card attached to the flowers. Congratulations on finding true love with John Parrish. May your relationship continue to blossom at the Henderson Motel. Your loving husband. Jimmy, you can't do this. I already did. I also sent arrangements to John's construction site, your mother's house, and the country club where you play tennis. Beth sank into her chair. You're destroying everything. No, Beth, you destroyed everything. I'm just making sure everyone knows who did it. The confrontation I'd been expecting came Friday night. I was working late in the garage, rewiring an old lamp that had belonged to my father, when John's truck pulled into the driveway. He didn't come alone. Beth got out of the passenger side, and from the back seat emerged Margot Ellis, looking like she was dressed for court in a sharp business suit and an expression that could cut glass. I set down my tools and walked to the open garage door. Evening, folks. This is unexpected. Cut the act, Jimmy, John said. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk. I thought we already talked. You told me things just happen, remember? Margot stepped forward. Mr. Parrish, I'm here as Beth's legal counsel. Your behavior this week has been harassment, plain and simple. The flowers, the public humiliation, freezing her out of her own home. It needs to stop. I looked at Margot with new interest. She was a small woman, maybe 5'4", but she carried herself like someone used to being the smartest person in the room. Expensive clothes, perfect makeup, the kind of confidence that came from winning more fights than you lost. Legal counsel, I said. That's interesting. When did Beth hire you, Margot? That's not relevant. I think it is. See, I've been doing some thinking this week about timing, about how quickly Beth went from panicked in Vegas to having a legal strategy, about how she knew exactly which buttons to push with the girls. Beth shifted uncomfortably. Jimmy, what are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that this whole thing feels a little too organized, a little too convenient. Margot's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Mr. Parrish, you're obviously under a great deal of stress. Perhaps we should schedule a time when you're feeling more rational. Oh, I'm feeling very rational. For the first time in months, actually. See, I started wondering why my wife's best friend was so eager to help her have an affair. Most friends would try to talk someone out of destroying their marriage, wouldn't they? I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm saying it straight out. You orchestrated this whole thing. The silence that followed was electric. John looked confused. Beth looked terrified. And Margot looked like a poker player who'd just been called on a bluff. That's ridiculous, Margot said finally. Is it? Let me tell you what I think happened. I think you've been planning this for a long time. I think you saw an opportunity to destroy my marriage and my business relationship with John, and you took it. Why would I want to do that? Because 5 years ago, I fired you. Another silence, longer this time. You worked for Parrish Electrical for 6 months, I continued. I hired you to handle our legal compliance, and you tried to take over the entire operation. You wanted to expand too fast, take on debt we couldn't handle, turn a solid family business into some kind of corporate empire. Margot's composure was starting to crack. You fired me because you couldn't handle working with a woman who was smarter than you. I fired you because you were reckless and arrogant, and apparently you never got over it. Beth was staring at Margot like she was seeing her for the first time. Margot, is this true? Did you plan this? Beth, don't listen to him. He's just trying to deflect blame. But the damage was done. I could see the doubt creeping into Beth's eyes, the pieces starting to fall into place. How long have you been planning this, Margot? I asked. How long have you been waiting for the right moment to get your revenge? You're paranoid, Margot said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Then explain why you encouraged Beth to open that secret savings account. Explain why you suggested she start documenting my controlling behavior. Explain why you were so eager to represent her when this all blew up. John finally spoke up. What secret savings account? Beth's face went white. John, I can explain. Explain what? What savings account? I was just being practical. Margot said I should have some financial independence. Financial independence for what? John demanded. For when she left both of you, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. John stared at Beth, understanding dawning on his face. You were planning to leave me too. John, no, that's exactly what it was, Margot said, her composure finally snapping. Did you really think she was going to end up with you, John? A construction worker with a high school education? Beth deserves better than both of you. The mask was off now. Margot stood there in my driveway, her true feelings finally exposed, and I realized I was looking at someone who had been playing a very long game. You played them both, I said, almost admiringly. You convinced Beth to have an affair to destroy her marriage to me, but you never intended for her to end up with John. You were planning to swoop in and pick up the pieces. Beth is an intelligent, accomplished woman, Margot said. She doesn't need either of you. Beth was crying now, quiet tears that spoke of a dawning understanding of how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. Margot, how could you do this to me? I trusted you. I did this for you, to free you from a mediocre life with mediocre men. John took a step toward Margot, his fists clenched. You destroyed my family, my business, everything. Your family was already broken, Margot shot back. I just helped it along. That's when I realized something that made me smile for the first time all week. You know what the beautiful part is? I said. You succeeded. You destroyed my marriage, my business partnership, my relationship with my brother. You got everything you wanted. Margot looked suspicious. What's your point? My point is that now everyone knows who you really are. Beth knows you manipulated her. John knows you used him. And I know you've been planning this revenge for 5 years. I pulled out my phone. By the way, I've been recording this entire conversation. Amazing what you can do with technology these days. The blood drained from Margot's face. You can't use that. It's illegal to record someone without their consent. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. And since I'm the one doing the recording, I consent. I looked at all three of them standing in my driveway, their alliance crumbling in real time. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Beth, you're going to withdraw the harassment complaint you filed this afternoon. Yes, I know about that too. John, you're going to sign over your shares in Parish Electrical for exactly $1. And Margot, you're going to find a new hobby, because if you come near me or my family again, this recording goes to the State Bar Association. You can't blackmail us, Margot said weakly. I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm just making sure everyone understands the consequences of their choices. Beth wiped her eyes. Jimmy, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Yes, you did. You just didn't mean to get caught. John was staring at the ground. What about the girls? What about them? They're going to hate me forever. Probably, but that's not my problem anymore. After they left, I went back into the garage and finished rewiring my father's lamp. When I plugged it in, it glowed warm and steady, casting a circle of light in the darkness. For the first time in months, I felt like I could see clearly. The Maple Heights Community Fall Festival happened every October in Riverside Park, and it was the kind of event where everyone showed up whether they wanted to or not. Local businesses set up booths, the high school band played patriotic songs, and the mayor gave a speech about community values. This year, I had a special reason for attending. Well, I arrived early and set up Parish Electrical's booth between the Lions Club and the Methodist Church bake sale. Mary and Joanne had decorated it with photos of our recent projects and a banner that read, Parish Electrical, powering your future. The girls arrived with Beth around noon. Both of my daughters looked uncomfortable, caught between their loyalty to their mother and their growing understanding of what she'd done. Beth looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past 2 weeks. She approached my booth cautiously. Jimmy, can we talk? We're talking now. Privately. I don't think that's a good idea. Besides, I like having witnesses these days. Beth flinched. The girls want to come home. This separation is tearing them apart. The girls are welcome any time. You know that. What about me? I looked at my wife of 16 years, this woman who had shared my bed and my dreams and my hopes for the future, and felt nothing but tired sadness. What about you, Beth? Don't I get a second chance? People make mistakes, Jimmy. Even you. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. A lot of choices, made over months. I was confused. Margot was in my head, telling me things, making me think. Margot didn't make you do anything. She just gave you permission to do what you already wanted to do. Beth started crying again, but this time it felt calculated. Performed for the growing crowd of neighbors who were pretending not to listen. Please, Jimmy, we can go to counseling. We can work through this. Beth, stop. I love you. I know I hurt you, but I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of not being the villain in this story. You love the idea of getting your comfortable life back without consequences. The crowd was definitely listening now. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably live streaming the whole thing. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it echoed across the park. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair. I stepped out from behind my booth and raised my voice so everyone could hear. Fair is when a man spends 16 years building a life with someone, and that someone doesn't repay his loyalty by sleeping with his brother. A gasp went through the crowd. Beth's face went white. Jimmy, please don't do this. Fair is when a man takes care of his sick mother, and his wife doesn't abandon him to go party in Vegas. More gasps. Phones were definitely recording now. Fair is when a man trusts his business partner, and that partner doesn't use the family business to coordinate an affair. I could see John across the park, standing by the beer tent, his face a mask of shame and anger. And fair is when a man's wife gets manipulated by someone with a grudge, and she's smart enough to recognize what's happening before she destroys everything that matters. Beth was sobbing now, but I wasn't finished. You want to know what's really unfair, Beth? What's unfair is that our daughters had to learn about their mother's affair from reading her text messages. What's unfair is that I had to find out my brother was betraying me from a credit card statement. What's unfair is that you let Margot Ellis use you as a weapon in her personal vendetta against me. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the high school band had stopped playing. So no, Beth, you don't get a second chance. You don't get to pretend this was all a big misunderstanding. You made your choices, and now you get to live with them. I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket and handed it to her. Divorce papers. I'm keeping the house, the business, and primary custody of the girls. You can visit them whenever you want, but you don't get to live with them anymore. Beth stared at the envelope like it was a snake. Jimmy, you can't. I already did. It's over, Beth. We're over. Your marriage to me is over. Your friendship with Margot is over. And whatever fantasy you had about a future with John is definitely over. I looked out at the crowd. All these people I'd known for years, who'd watched my family grow up in this town. I know some of you have heard different versions of this story. I know some of you think I'm the bad guy here. And you know what? Maybe I am. Maybe the bad guy is exactly what this situation needed. I packed up my booth and walked toward the parking lot. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of conversations starting up again. Phones ringing as people called their friends to share what they'd just witnessed. In my truck, I found Bree waiting for me. Dad? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you really the bad guy now? I thought about it for a moment. I don't know, Bree, but I'm not the victim anymore, and sometimes that's the same thing. Can we go home now? Yeah, let's go home. As we drove away from the festival, I caught a glimpse in my rearview mirror of Beth standing alone in the park, still holding the envelope, while the town buzzed with gossip around her. I'd spent 16 years being the good guy, the understanding husband, the reasonable man who always gave people the benefit of the doubt. It had gotten me betrayed, humiliated, and nearly destroyed. But being the villain had gotten me my life back. I could live with that. Dwa nol yidid blating, dwa nol lid dwa nol. Dwa David, adin sit 30 dadin, circled chest.